Welcome to the deep dive. Forget scrolling, we're jumping straight into the information you need.
Exactly.
Today, we're unpacking the incredible, sometimes pretty wild life and career of a true action icon. Jean-Claude Van Damme. You know him, the muscles from Brussels.
We've really dug into a whole load of source material here. Articles, research, biographical info, basically everything compiled about him.
And our goal is to pull out the most essential stuff, the surprising details, and frankly, just the fascinating insights.
Yeah, because there's more to him than just the action hero image.
Right. You definitely know the flying splits and the kicks, but our mission here is to go, well, way beyond that. We want to explore the hidden struggles, those unexpected turns, and the influences that really shaped his journey.
From like a kid in Brussels to global superstar.
Exactly. We're here to give you the curated highlights.
And you really do have to start right at the beginning to kind of get the full picture. He was born Jean-Claude Camille Francois van Varenberg in Belgium, obviously.
Bilingual family background, French and Flemish.
But it wasn't acting that first grabbed him, you know. The sources make it clear his real foundation was martial arts. He got into Shotokan karate when he was just 10 years old.
10. That's young. And he stuck with it.
Oh, yeah. Total commitment. Earned a second Dan black belt by the time he was 18. Now, you might expect that, right? Intense martial arts focus.
Sure, for an action star.
But here's where the sources show something maybe less expected. Alongside the karate, he was seriously into bodybuilding. Seriously enough to actually win the Mr. Belgium title in 1978.
Wait, Mr. Belgium. Bodybuilding. Okay, that's a twist. Martial arts and that level of bodybuilding.
It is. But the really surprising thing the sources point out, 5 years studying ballet.
Ballet? No way, 5 years. That seems almost opposite to the action stuff.
It does seem that way, but his view on it is really interesting. The sources quote him saying something like, if you can survive a ballet workout, you can survive a workout in any other sport.
Wow. Okay, that puts it in perspective. The discipline must be incredible.
Exactly. It says a lot about the rigor, which, clearly influenced him.
Yeah.
And the sources also mention he trained in Taekwondo and Muay Thai as well.
So he built this incredibly diverse physical base, karate, weights, Muay Thai, and ballet.
And it paid off competitively. His record is pretty impressive, according to the sources. Semi-contact, 44 wins, only 4 losses.
Okay.
Full contact was even more striking. 18 wins, 1 loss. And get this, all 18 wins were by knockout.
All by KO. That's intense.
Yeah. The sources mention highlights like being on the European Championship team and a memorable TKO win against Patrick Teugels, someone he lost to before.
So a revenge match. Shows that fighter's mentality.
Definitely. But, before Hollywood, the sources show him hustling back in Brussels, trying to save money. He was selling flowers.
Selling flowers?
Yep. And he opened his own gym, California Gym.
He owned a gym. Was it successful?
Apparently, yeah. The sources say he was doing well, maybe pulling in like $15,000 a month. But his dream was acting, so he sold it.
Even though his dad advised against it, the sources say.
Right. That shows some serious conviction, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And that conviction, well, it pushed him and a friend to head to the United States in '82, purely to become an actor.
But the sources are clear. Those early years in the U.S., they were tough. Really tough.
Yeah, you mentioned he sold the gym, but he still struggled financially.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
The material talks about him sometimes sleeping in cars, even having to steal food sometimes just to get by.
That's a world away from the movie star life. What did he do for work?
Anything he could find, pretty much.
Yeah.
Extra work sources say maybe even in break-in bouncer at Chuck Norris's bar.
Chuck Norris's bar? Seriously?
Yep. Drove limos, gave private karate lessons, just piecing it together.
How did he keep going? That sounds incredibly demoralizing.
Well, the sources note he had a routine to kind of keep his head straight and stay fit. Nightly runs, training at Gold's Gym. That discipline again, maybe?
Must be. And talk about hustle. The sources mention this amazing story where he basically made up a Hong Kong investor to get meetings with producers.
Yeah. Just fabricated to get his foot in the door. You kind of have to admire the nerve.
Seriously. So what was his actual first film work?
Pretty minor stuff.
Wow.
Stunt team on Missing in Action. A little part in a comedy short, Monaco Forever. His first role that people really noticed was playing the bad guy in No Retreat, No Surrender.
Okay. And wasn't there that famous story about Predator? He was supposed to be the original Predator?
Yes. The sources confirm that. He was initially cast. The idea was his martial arts skills would make for a really agile, deadly alien hunter.
So what happened?
Well, it just didn't work out. The sources mentioned issues with the suit. It was apparently incredibly hot and restrictive. Plus, he'd be completely unrecognizable.
Right.
And maybe more importantly, they realized they needed someone physically much bigger, more imposing to go up against Arnold and that whole team.
Makes sense. Did he regret missing out?
The sources say he looked back on it later without regret, understanding the decision.
Okay, so his big break wasn't fighting Arnold in a rubber suit. It came a bit later, 1988, Bloodsport.
That was it. Based on Frank Dux's, let's say, alleged true story, this was a low-budget film, like $1.5 million maybe. But it just took off at the box office.
And Van Damme was still struggling when he got in that part.
Well, yeah. The sources reveal he was basically homeless and had to practically beg for the lead role.
Wow. But the producer saw something special, right?
Yeah, the producer apparently commented on his appeal to both men and women, said he had that crossover potential.
And after Bloodsport, things moved fast.
Incredibly fast. The sources show he followed up quickly with Cyborg, then Kickboxer.
Kickboxer was huge, wasn't it?
Massive. And as the sources detail, it kicked off a whole franchise that ran for years.
Then films like Lionheart, the sources say that was maybe seen as him trying to show a bit more range than just fighting.
Yeah, prove he wasn't just the karate guy.
Yeah.
And the sources also noted famously featured his rear nudity, which caused a bit of a stir back then.
Oh, okay. Then Death Warrant and Double Impact, playing twins.
Yep, playing dual roles. Reviews were mixed, but the sources confirm it made good money. But the really big step up came in '92. Universal Soldier with Dolph Lundgren.
Ah, the big one. That's the film with that supposed staged fight they had at the Cannes Film Festival.
That's the one. Whether it was real or PR, who knows. But the film itself, huge success worldwide. Sources say over $100 million gross on a $23 million budget.
So he was really at his peak then, through the 90s.
Absolutely. He did Hard Target. That was John Woo's first American film.
Oh, right. The legendary Hong Kong director.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then Time Cop, which, according to the sources, is actually his highest grossing movie as the lead, pulled in over $100 million globally.
And Street Fighter. That one. Well, the reviews weren't great, were they?
No, critically panned mostly. But the sources point out it was still a big commercial hit. Shows the power of a known video game property, I guess.
True. What else came in the later 90s?
Quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sudden Death, then his first time directing with The Quest. Maximum Risk. Double Team, that was the one with Dennis Rodman.
Oh, I remember that. Wild Pairing.
Yeah. The Knockoff, Legionnaire, and he even came back for another Universal Soldier, theatrically, Universal Soldier. The Return.
That was a relentless run. But after that huge peak, the sources suggest things changed quite a bit for his career.
Yeah, they did. From around 2000 to maybe 2007, the sources show he moved pretty heavily into the direct-to-video market. Films like Replicant, In Hell, Wake of Death, they were mostly going straight to DVD or streaming.
So it felt like he kind of stepped back from the big screen spotlight for a time.
For sure. But the sources also detail a really remarkable comeback, critically speaking.
You mean JCVD?
Exactly. That 2008 film where he played this sort of fictionalized, down-on-his-luck version of himself, it got incredible reviews.
Yeah, I remember the buzz around that. People were really impressed.
They were. The sources highlight that Time magazine even named his performance the second best of that year. Said he deserved an Oscar nomination.
That must have felt pretty validating, getting that kind of praise for a more dramatic turn after years of being the action guy.
Absolutely. He also dipped back into the Universal Soldier franchise again, with Regeneration and Day of Reckoning, teaming up with Dolph Lundgren again in those.
And he reached a whole new audience with voice acting, right?
Yeah. The sources note his role as Master Croc in the Kung Fu Panda movies, which were huge, obviously.
Then came his big return to mainstream action, but as the villain this time.
Right, in The Expendables 2 in 2012, playing the main bad guy. The sources confirm it was a massive box office hit, and people really liked his performance in it.
He seemed to be having fun with that role.
Definitely. And then, completely out of the blue, came that viral moment that everyone saw. 2013, the Volvo Trucks epic split ad.
Oh my God, yes. That was everywhere.
Wasn't it? The sources say it just blew up. Millions and millions of views almost overnight, a genuine global phenomenon.
Just incredible marketing. What's he been up to more recently, according to the sources?
Well, he's kept working pretty steadily, reuniting with directors like Peter Hyams, Ringo Lam.
Mm-hmm.
He even showed up in the rebooted Kickboxer films.
And video games, too.
Yeah, kind of full circle there. The sources mention he provided his likeness and voice for Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat 1, which is cool because Cage was originally based on him from Bloodsport.
Wow, that's a neat connection.
And he also appeared as a target you could hunt in the Hitman game series.
Okay, so looking back at this whole career, his legacy in action movies is just undeniable, isn't it?
Totally. The sources consistently frame him as a real icon of that genre, one of the absolute biggest names, alongside maybe Steven Seagal in that 80s and 90s action boom.
And he definitely had an influence, right? Open doors for others.
Yeah, the sources suggest he paved the way for other martial artists in Hollywood. He's seen as maybe the most remade or rebooted action star, too. There's even a comparison drawn in the material to that whole Bruceploitation thing after Bruce Lee died, stars filling a similar niche.
Interesting. And he had that sex symbol status, too.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
The sources mentioned he was the only action star on a National Enquirer top 10 sexiest men list back then.
Uh-huh. And the influence extends beyond acting, the sources say.
Definitely. The material lists specific fighters, athletes, even filmmakers who cite him as an inspiration. You've got names like Georges St. Pierre, Lyoto Machida, Scott Adkins.
Wow, major MMA names.
Yeah, the Diaz brothers, Conor McGregor, even Will Smith is mentioned.
Will Smith.
And that little bit of trivia about wrestler Rob Van Damme. The sources suggest his name might have been partly inspired by Jean-Claude due to the resemblance and martial arts background.
That makes sense. And going back to Mortal Kombat for a sec, the fact that the game was originally pitched around him, and Johnny Cage is basically him from Bloodsport.
Yeah, that's a huge piece of gaming and pop culture history tied right to him. It's pretty wild.
And he got official recognition, too.
Yep. Inducted into the Martial Arts History Museum Hall of Fame in 2020.
Okay, so that covers the career highs and influence. Now, the sources we looked at also go into his public and personal life, which includes some challenges and controversies. And just to be clear, we're reporting impartially on what the material contains here.
Right. One significant thing detailed is his diagnosis with bipolar disorder back in 1998. The sources mention him speaking publicly about it, calling himself an extreme bipolar, acknowledging really severe mood swings.
That must have been difficult to manage, especially with the pressures of fame.
For sure. The material also touches on his past struggles with addiction, specifically cocaine. It notes his method for quitting was cold turkey, combined with intense exercise.
His personal life has been complex, too, according to the sources. Marriages.
Yeah, the sources mention 5 marriages, but to 4 different women, he remarried one of his ex-wives. And he has 3 children, Christopher, Bianca, and Nicholas.
And there was that story involving Kylie Minogue.
Yes, the sources include details about an affair he had with her during the filming of Street Fighter. Apparently, his wife at the time only found out about it much later when he talked about it publicly.
Okay. Now, moving on to some specific controversies. Again, just presenting what's in the source material. There was a lawsuit in 1997 involving Frank Dux.
Yeah, the guy he played in Bloodsport. Dux sued him over work on another film, The Quest. But according to the sources, the lawsuit also included claims from Dux that Van Damme had kind of exaggerated his own martial arts record. Dux apparently claimed Van Damme wasn't that skilled when he first tutored him.
How did Van Damme's side respond?
Well, the sources mention his lawyer defending him, citing documentation for his achievements, and pointing to his obvious physical abilities, like the splits, as evidence.
Okay, then there was an incident in 1998 with Chuck Zito.
Right, at a strip club. The material presents Zito's claim that he hit Van Damme several times after Van Damme supposedly made some rude remarks.
And Van Damme's version?
The sources also include Van Damme denying he was struck and him publicly challenging Zito afterwards. So, conflicting accounts there.
The sources also mention some criticism he faced for attending an event.
Yes, the Chechen president Ramzan Kadyrov's birthday party in 2011. As reported in the material, human rights groups criticized him and other celebrities for attending, citing concerns about alleged human rights abuses under Kadyrov's regime.
And more recently, there were some serious accusations reported.
Yeah, the source material includes reports from April 2025 about accusations from a Romanian directorate investigating organized crime. As reported, these accusations claim Van Damme was involved in human trafficking concerning 5 Romanian women in Cannes.
Okay, again, just stating what the sources report on that. What about his political views, as mentioned in the material?
The sources note he expressed support for Donald Trump back in 2016. And they also mentioned some theories he discussed at the time involving, like, the Illuminati may be trying to stop Trump.
Right, and his visit to Ukraine.
Yes, that was in December 2022. The sources say he met with military personnel. used the phrase Slava Ukraini, glory to Ukraine, and stated his message was about peace.
Was there something about payment for that?
The sources mention a theory about him possibly being paid by USA for the message, but they specifically state this theory is unconfirmed by reliable sources within the material we reviewed.
Got it.
And finally, on that front, the sources include a message he directed at Vladimir Putin in April 2025, asking him to be an ambassador for peace, based on, like, love and sport.
Okay. Beyond the controversies in politics, the sources also highlight a different side, his advocacy work.
Yeah, conservationism and animal rights. He's done PSAs, and according to the material, he's working towards setting up animal sanctuaries.
And he got an official title related to that.
He did. In 2022, the sources report he was appointed as the Democratic Republic of the Congo's Ambassador on Environment, focusing on protecting forests and wildlife there.
Interesting. And lastly, the sources mention actual monuments to him.
Yeah, 2 public statues. One's in Brussels, described as representing the dream of a Brussels kid who really believed in himself.
Miss Tribute, and the other?
Is in Azerbaijan, in a village called Van Damme. The sources say the monument is basically there because the village name sounds like his name.
That's pretty straightforward.
Kind of funny, right?
So, wow, we've really covered a huge range today, just based on these sources. From that intense early discipline in martial arts and, yes, ballet, through the real grind of being a struggling actor, the absolute explosion onto the global scene, navigating some serious personal stuff and public controversies, to those later comebacks and his ongoing work. It's quite a life.
It really is. The material paints a picture of a very unique, very complex figure in movies and pop culture. And you can see the influence he's had, on lots of different people and fields.
It makes you think. That incredible discipline he had from martial arts, from ballet, that rigorous foundation. And then you contrast that with the, often total chaos of Hollywood fame, the personal struggles, the constant public eye.
Yeah, it's stark contrast.
How do you think those foundations helped him handle it all? Or maybe, did they sometimes clash with that world? Did that strict discipline create tension when faced with the unpredictable nature of stardom? What do you think?
That's a great question to ponder, actually.